The Sunday school lesson for September the 8th, 2024 comes from 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 22 through 24, verses 37 through 39, verse 46, and verses 48 through 50a. Our house is a very fine house. Welcome, viewers and subscribers, to my channel, The Backstory and More. Or if you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school lesson, you are at the right place, because I will share the backstory, read the lesson text, and offer a brief lesson summary. If you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel and help this channel grow one viewer and one subscriber at a time. The backstory takes us to 1 King chapter 8, verses 1 through 21, when the ark was brought to the temple. When the temple was finished, Solomon had the priests place the ark of the Lord's covenant in the most holy place of the temple. The ark now contained only the 2 stone tablets of the covenant, the golden pot of manna, and Aaron's rod. That had been in the ark apparently had been lost, perhaps centuries earlier, when the Philistines had possessions of the ark. 1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 11. God's presence then filled the temple in a cloud that was so dense the priests could not perform their service, for the glory of the Lord filled his temple. As the Lord's presence fell on the temple, Solomon delivered a blessing to the people of Israel, recounting their history and declaring God's faithfulness. The backstory ends here, and today's lesson begins with the next frame. Verses 22 through 23. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in front of the whole assembly of Israel, spread out his hands toward heaven, and said, Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below. You who keep your covenant of love with your servants who continue wholeheartedly in your way. You have kept your promise to your servant David, my father. With your mouth you have promised, and with your hand you have fulfilled it, as it is today. Verses 37 through 39. When famine or plague comes to the land, or blight or mildew, locusts or grasshoppers, or when an enemy besieges them in any of their cities, whatever disaster or disease may come, and when a prayer or plea is made by anyone among your people Israel, being aware of the afflictions of their own hearts, and spreading out their hands toward this temple, then hear from heaven, your dwelling place. Forgive and act. Deal with everyone according to all they do, since you know their hearts, for you alone know every human heart. Verse 46. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin, and you become angry with them and give them over to their enemies, who take them captive to their own lands, far away or near. Verses 48 through 58. And if they turn back to you with all their heart and soul in the land of their enemies, who took them captive, and pray to you toward the land you gave their ancestors, toward the city you have chosen, and the temple I have built for your name, then from heaven, your dwelling place, hear their prayer and their plea, and uphold their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you. Forgive all the offenses they have committed against you. A brief summary. The rest of this chapter follows the dedication of the temple, much like the way congregations today hold dedication services for new church buildings. In his prayer of dedication, Solomon acknowledged that God could not dwell on earth. So he prayed that God would take special notice of the temple and particularly those who would pray in it. Such worshippers would be there because they knew God had promised of this place. My name shall be there. The name of God in the Old Testament signifies more than a title. It stands for the essence or nature of God. Solomon and the other people of Israel knew that it is not truly possible to build an edifice to contain God, that one cannot say of the place exclusively, "This is where God is." Even so, as Habakkuk would later write, "The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him." Habakkuk 2 and 20. God was present in the temple in a special way, even though he was not unmindful of any part of the land. Israel was to be a land the Lord your God cares for. Moses had said, "The eyes of the Lord your God are continually on it from the beginning of the year to its end." Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 12. Still, God would respond to Solomon's prayer by saying of the temple, "My eyes and my heart will always be there." 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 3. Solomon recognized that God's blessing hinged on the people's obedience, but he also recognized that there is no one who does not sin. Verse 46. Thus, he suggested several situations in which the people might sin and receive divine retribution. He then prayed that, in each case, if the people would repent and pray either in or toward the temple, they would be forgiven and the retribution ended. He even prayed for the foreigner who does not belong to your people Israel, but who heard of the Lord and prayed toward the temple, that God would hear and answer that person's prayer as well. Verses 41 through 43. After his prayer, Solomon rose and blessed the people. In doing so, he stressed the importance of obedience to the Lord's commands, decrees, and laws. Obedience would ensure his continued presence, and his presence would turn them toward obedience. Thank you so much for listening, and join me soon for the next backstory and more. Stay safe, and may God bless.